Okay, welcome back. It's been a little bit of time since we've had a one-on-one. I'm actually going to start calling this season 2. I feel like I'm entering like a new era of the podcast, like a new chapter. First of all, I want to acknowledge the fact that I set myself the goal of doing 20 podcast episodes because I heard that most people who start a podcast, they will give up before they've finished 20 episodes. And so if you just do 20 episodes, that means you're in the top 1% of most successful podcasts of all time. And bitch, I did it. I'm here on episode, like, what are we now, 27? So I just want to acknowledge that because that just shows you how far you can go just through consistency. Like, doesn't even have to be good. Like, I'm really happy with like the first 20 episodes. I feel like just doing them one-on-one by myself, just having short form episodes really kind of fleshed out like the direction I was going to go with the podcast because I really wasn't sure, to be honest. I was like, didn't know what was going to happen. I was just kind of following the trail. And I feel like, I really kind of set a tone for like what the heart or the core of the podcast really is. And I think that, now that I've kind of done that, I feel like season 2 that I'm entering, I've kind of got more confidence and I feel like I'm really ready to enter my era of like interviewing other people. So obviously I've already started that and I'm really excited by that. And now I've officially got like better equipment. So I know if you listen to the episode with Dylan, how like at the start of that I was like trying to like set up the equipment for ages and I was like, I don't know why the fuck it's not working. Anyway, I figured out like today I figured out that it's because the quality of the chords that I was using were like shit and that's why it wasn't really working. So here's an audio clip from the moment when I realised that I got it working. Okay, is this working? There is no fucking way that this is working. Is this working? Wait, if I go closer, is it going to pop? Pop, 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 off, bitch. Oh my God, fuck, that is recording so loud. I can see. This must be real. Yes, finally. Okay, wow. So what do I do back here? Hello, Joe. I've also like decided where I'm going to set up like a studio. Like the episode with Dylan, I had it in the shed and I set up a little space and it was like cute and everything, but you could hear like every car going past, like every dog barking. And I had to like, luckily you couldn't really hear it that much because I learned how to like noise gate that and like noise reduce like those background noises, but like it doesn't sound great. So, and I was thinking about it and I'm like, well, where can I set up? Because I don't really have the space and can't like afford to, my cat in the background. I can't like afford to like, hire a studio or whatever. So I was like, well, why don't I bring it like really into my living room? Because I feel like Planet Mu, this is what Planet Mu means to me. Like Planet Mu is like the word that I go into when I create. Mu is almost my alter ego in a way. Like I kind of just let myself and my mind go crazy. And when I call it like the heart machine, it's almost like I believe that we all have like a piece of divinity inside of us, like as above, so below. And that within us is like that love, that source, that spirit, like whatever. And I feel like when I'm doing art, what I'm really doing is like channeling like that spirit inside of me into the outside world. And I have a quote that is, creativity is just bringing something back from the source. And so I was thinking about it. I'm like, well, why don't I literally bring people like into my living room? Like, I've spent so much effort like decorating my house. I put so much love into it. A lot of the like pieces of furniture I've made myself or with my dad. And so I'm like, well, if I brought people into my home to interview them, then it would literally be like bringing them into the heart of like my home, my core, Planet Mu. So I'm going to be setting up video from now on and probably putting it on YouTube. So there's visuals of the interviews, which I kind of didn't want to do for a while. I actually thought I was going to be anonymous, but now something in me is just kind of saying like kind of stand by what you're doing. And so I like collect like really pretty bongs and they're really just like beautiful pieces of glass really. So yeah, they're like on my fireplace. So just like little things like that about me you'll get to see. Something else that I want to talk to before going into season 2 is like, I just want to thank like the people who subscribe to my coffee, which is, it's like a poor man's Patreon basically, where you can like subscribe. It's like the minimum is like $3 a month, or you can do a one-off donation if you want. And yeah, shout out to Bat Prince and to Rachel. And I have one more subscriber who is I don't know who you are, no offense, but can you tell me who you are so I can thank you? But like, yeah, like if you don't want to subscribe to the podcast, like you can do one-off donations. Like my Auntie Margaret donated me $30. Thank you. My goal is really to just be able to like make enough money to be paying what it costs me to like host the podcast, which costs me money every month. And then I would like to pay off my overheads. And then, yeah, like the dream would be able to make a living doing this. And then like being able to hire like a studio, and we could have like, you know, better equipment, like someone to edit videos so we could have recordings, like, you know, the dream. But I'm not attached to that dream anymore. It's just like, if it's cool if it happens, if not, whatever. But that is something that I want to acknowledge, is just that like I feel like we're in a culture where like we don't value art like at all. And it's interesting because like I've like been getting into Bitcoin this year, because that's an interesting thing about Bitcoin, is that community really values and respects art. And I didn't know shit about Bitcoin. So I started listening to this podcast called How Money, and they really break down the basics of Bitcoin to like a complete like newcomer. And yeah, they were like, oh, we've started a Patreon, subscribe if you want to. And in my head, I was like, I can't afford that. That's the story that I was telling myself, even though it was like $10 a month or something. And then I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? Like, I have learned so much from this podcast. Like, if I was to like pay like an individual to like teach me this, it'd be costing me hundreds, if not thousands. If I was like to do an online course to teach me about Bitcoin, it would cost me hundreds, if not thousands. Like, I can't afford $10 a month. That's fucking bullshit. Like, in exchange for what I'm getting, like, yeah, I'm more than happy to, because that's their time, that's their art as well. Like, it's not really easy like talking and like, you know, doing like editing and shit like that. And I'm like, yeah, of course I can. So when I thought about it in that way, I was like, it's just interesting, like the stories that we tell ourselves. But I've been thinking about it a lot, and I'm like, we need to start paying our content creators more. Like, if there's a content creator that you follow that you feel like you get some kind of value out of it, if their art inspires you, even a small business, like in Geelong, there was this business called Pistol Pete's, and it was in like Little Mallet Street, like near St. James area. And like I never went to this restaurant or this bar, but they always had like blues music playing like live. And like every time you walk down that area, it was just such a good vibe. And I was always just like, oh, it's so cool that like Geelong has this, but I never went there. And then I found out recently that like that bar is closing down because they weren't getting enough business. And I was like, damn, like if I had known that, like I probably would have gone, because it's like, not even that I really care about blues, but it's like I believe in this business, and like I kind of want it to still exist. And I think this is the bottom line. If there are like small businesses that you like out there that have good dreams of changing the world, you know, there are artists that you like on your Instagram every day and seeing their art, you know, start paying them, because like some of them, it's only like $3 a month, like my coffee, right? And I'm not saying that like you have to pay me. Like I promise to God, I'm not sitting there judging, being like, oh, you know, this person listens to my podcast, but they don't even subscribe. Like I get how it's annoying to like subscribe, because you're like, oh fuck, like I forgot my password, now this shit's coming out of my bank every month, and I don't like, you know, whatever. Because like honestly, like I feel like a lot of people support me in other ways, and you can support me in other ways. Like word of mouth is probably the best way that you can like support me and help me. And I'm so grateful for all the people who like really do that, because I'm not on social media. So it's like the only way this podcast can grow right now is through like word of mouth. And so like, yeah, I don't want people to think that I'm going to be like judge and being like, oh, they're not like, you know, give me money. But like, maybe that's just the story that you can like, mental story that you have that you could like, you know, reflect on, not just for me, but for all other content creators. It's just something that I was been thinking about and want to throw out there. I also have a new website. It's planetmu.com.au, and all the resources for every podcast episode is on the blog there. I also have a pop-up box where you can ask me like any question, and I'd love to hear from people, like any question that they have that they want answered on the podcast maybe, and I'll probably give a heads up and be like, hey, I'm going to have this guest coming on soon, so you know, if you have any like episodes you want, any questions you want to ask them, then just like hit me up. Yeah, I'd actually like love to like hear people's opinions and questions that they have. I also have some episodes that only subscribers can hear on the Coffee account, so the link for that I'll put it in the description, but it's also, if you go to planetmu.com.au, you can find the link to go to the Coffee site, and yeah, that's where you find subscriber-only content. And the episodes that I'm posting there are just honestly the ones that are a bit more vulnerable, because, you know, sometimes it's a bit scary, like opening yourself up to the world, and like I've received my fair amount of hate. And so, I don't know, there's some things that I'm like almost hesitant to post. I'm like, you know what, well, fuck it. Then I'll just like post these as subscriber-only content episodes. And then that way it's like, you know, the haters have to like pay to like receive it, and then like I benefit. So like that's fine. But it's interesting because I feel like self-consciousness is like a topic that I've been contemplating lately. And I mean, like I know we all like kind of struggle with it, but I just kind of realized like how much I have seen myself through the eyes of others my whole life. And I mean, in like in a negative way. And I think I've done a good job in my life of like going on and doing the things I want to do despite that, but it's not like I don't have those voices in my head. And I honestly think that this has a little bit to do with masking and autism, because I think that sometimes it's almost like I remember every like bad thing that anybody's ever said about me, and so it's like everything that I do is like has to pass through this filter and make sure it like passes through like all these different ways that can be perceived before I kind of release it to the world. And I think everybody has this to a degree, but I think that like for me what masking means is like really that filter through which I pass things through. And I think that like, you know, being a perfectionist, my inner critic is so strong that like I just have all these voices saying like looking at me from every different direction. Sometimes I'll re-listen to a podcast and be like, imagine if this person listened to it, like what they would think, or imagine it from this person's perspective. And it's like, oh, you know, obviously not great for my mental health. I mean, I think it can be actually kind of good in certain ways, because you kind of check yourself a little bit and like your ego, and I think that's okay. And I actually think I heard Joe Rogan say once, like someone asked him what makes a good podcaster, and he said someone who can look at themselves and things from lots of different perspectives. And I was like, oh, okay, then maybe that's like a strength, and it made me feel good about it. But I think like honestly, like the biggest like journey breakthrough that I've had lately is that like I've realized that, you know, I have all these thoughts in my head of these imaginary people like saying these things about me, and I give so much power to that. And I think something that's really, really like honestly in my heart been changing lately is that like I've kind of stopped believing them. Like I've actually started to have more positive thoughts about myself. And it's interesting because like I feel like I've been doing this in really like micro ways, like for the last like few years since I started like the self-love journey and started the positive affirmation music and all this stuff. And like, I feel like individually on like certain topics, I really worked on changing my beliefs on how I saw myself. Like for example, my body, right? You know, used to be like full criticism, and then like I changed those thoughts. Or there's been so many areas in my life where I've worked on that, like, you know, like I imagine it like I'm just like standing like in the backyard at nighttime, and it's like, you know, I see one star and I pick it up, and that's like the thought around body image, and I change that star so it changes color or something, and then I release it, and then I go to a different star, and maybe that's something to do, you know, with success and my views on myself around that, and letting that go. And then just like I feel like the last like, I don't know, 2-3 years I've been like just individually changing like all these parts of my brain, and just like changing my belief system and my beliefs, you know. And it feels like right now I'm getting to a point where it's almost like, I feel almost like I've changed the color of like all the stars in my life, in my mind, where like almost every thought that I have now reflected back to me is a positive one. I'm so grateful. I'll literally just go through all the things I'm grateful for. I'm so grateful for this. Life is so good. Like belief systems that I'm choosing. Wow. Like I actually believe, like I'm so grateful. I have all these things. Let's list them and let's feel like genuine appreciation for them. And like, let's look at all the way that life is good, and life is good. And then like, let's look at all the ways that I'm great and I am great. And then like, I feel like the image of me that's been reflected back to me internally now is a positive one. Not completely, like, but when I'm like beating myself up, and when the thoughts about myself are negative, I notice them way more now because the contrast is so stark. But yeah, I feel like all these like individual like areas of my life I've targeted, and like it's almost like they've all thread together now, and like the bigger picture inside myself is one that's like way more light and bright and like happier. And I genuinely am like crossing over this bridge where I'm just like happy in ways I've never been happy before, and just like laughing in ways I haven't laughed before. And I'm like, fuck, like I'm actually like happy now, like I made it. But I think the secret to this is just like, you know, when you're depressed and you're at rock bottom, the idea of being happy is so far away that it's like, what's the point of even getting up off the floor? And I think like what I've been working on really is just like, just try to make your thoughts just a little bit more positive. Like don't, you know, use positivity to like run away, like still deal with what you need to deal with, but like just try and change your thoughts to be just a little bit more positive. And then if you lift that little bit up off the floor, the next day you can make them just a little bit more positive, and you can kind of keep lifting. And I've actually been listening to a lot of Abraham Hicks. So like Abraham Hicks is actually like a spirit that this lady named Esther Hicks reckons that she can channel. And like when I first heard this, I was like, bitch, you have got to be kidding me. Like shut the fuck up. Like she even has like an accent. Like when the spirit comes through, she has an accent. And I was like, this is the, like, cause I'm skeptical by nature. So I'm like, this is bullshit. So I put it on the shelf for like maybe a year, I don't know. But recently I've been listening, like you could just YouTube like Abraham Hicks, like all of these just like rampages and like talks that she does like come through, and I've just been listening to them because I've looked at it in a different way. Like a lot of people listen to Abraham Hicks because it's like law of attraction, right? So, you know, for those who don't know, law of attraction basically means that like, you know, your thoughts put out a frequency and, you know, that frequency will bring back like energy. So basically saying that your thoughts create your reality. And, you know, there's actually a lot of science that kind of supports this. And like, I believe it because bitch, if you've taken enough acid, like you've seen this, like, you know, this is true. That's the best way. If you know, you know, like that's all I can say. But anyway, so like a lot of people like use this because they're like, well, I can reprogram my mind through my thoughts to create a better reality. And a lot of people swear by this. So like Joe Dispenza is another example of someone who used to study the placebo effect, who talks about this and writes about this. Yeah. So a lot of people like will listen to Abraham Hicks because they like want to just like, you know, manifest stuff, like manifest more money and things like that. And a lot of people swear by it and say that they have. And that's not really why I'm listening to it though. I'm listening to it because I really like the way that what she talks about is like how to just like make your thoughts better, how to just like train your brain to just like think about things in a more positive way. And I don't know, I'm really fucking with it. Like I really think that there's something to it, and it's honestly really helping me because I'm not actually doing it to try and like make more money. Like that'd be great and like manifest all this stuff into my life. I'm really just using it to like frame my mind in a different way where I can just appreciate things in my life better, because they say that if you do that, then like you'll attract more. But you know, whatever you're using it for me, like I've actually been finding it like, yeah, just really helpful in just changing my thoughts. And I think that this is really like the chapter that I'm going through right now. I don't know, there's something in me that's actually believing that like these bad thoughts, like people are going to think this about me and whatnot, it's just an illusion. Like I'm finally realizing that it's genuinely not real. Like it's honestly an illusion. And there's something that Aubrey Marcus once said that really stuck with me. And he said, you know, he was talking about, you know, just having faith, like having faith that things can get better, that your dreams can come true, whatever. And he said, it's not a question of faith because you always have faith. You just have faith in the bad. And I think that's really it. Like the worldview that I've had so far has been so negative because I've believed, you know, all these things and all these people's opinions of me and whatnot. And it's like, because I've believed them, I've let them stop me in my life. Like I haven't been putting the podcast on YouTube and stuff because, or I wanted to be anonymous because I couldn't be fucked with the hate that I might attract. And I feel like by not like listening to this illusion anymore, this Maya, that like I've taken my power back. I don't know, there's some element of like stepping into my power now because that was my world. That was my worldview because that was the direction I was looking in. And I don't know, something about, I feel like I'm getting to the final end of like all the work that I've put in over the last like 2-3 years of like changing my thoughts to a more positive way one by one, where it's just like my worldview is like shifting right now. And that's pretty scary because I feel like I'm letting go of who I was. And there's this feeling as well that's like my internal monologue, right, is just always really negative. And so like I think where I'm at right now is that like all my thoughts around me have changed to be so much more positive that I think I'm realizing that like my internal monologue, like the person that I identify as, like my ego, I know that like its days are numbered. Like I know that soon that's going to be the most negative part of me, and that part of me is going to have to die. And really it's not dying, it's just, you know, changing it, transmuting it, you know, like they say, like energy can never be destroyed. It'll just be transmuted. It reminds me of another like really good saying about meditation. Meditation is to die before you die and realize that there is no death. And I feel like almost like the center of me has been like kind of really resistant to the journey in a lot of ways. I almost feel like I've walked this path like begrudgingly, like almost backwards, in a fight with it in a way. And I think it's because I've kind of always known deep down that I'm like, you know, going to have to kill part of me, like at least the part of me that I identify with. And I think there's been a lot of resistance to that. You know, it reminds me of like Harry Potter when like he's destroying all the Horcruxes, knowing that eventually he's going to have to die too. Like, oh, sorry if you haven't read it, but if you haven't read it, like where the fuck you been, Anne Frank? Like, no offense. I just feel like there's just all these emotions and feelings and like memories and stuff that I just feel like I'm like outgrowing them and I'm just leaving them behind because they just don't serve me and they're just not in alignment anymore of like who I'm becoming. And that's a really good feeling, you know? Yeah, so that's where I'm at on the journey. Things are really, really positive with me. But I just wanted to share like a short story that I feel like kind of encapsulates what I'm learning at the moment. And it's called The Tale of Two Wolves. An old Cherokee told his grandson, "My son, there is a battle between two wolves inside us all. One is evil. It is anger, jealousy, greed, resentment, inferiority, lies, and ego. The other is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, humility, kindness, empathy, and truth." The boy thought about it and asked, "Grandfather, which wolf wins?" The old man replied, "The one you feed."